I first heard the whistle on a windless night in late October, half an hour before midnight, while locking the tiny town library where I worked. The sound rose from the abandoned railway cutting like a question nobody had the right to ask, a single drawn-out note that hung in the air when everything else was silent. The tracks there had been pulled up in the 70s. The station was a crumbling shell frequented only by barn owls and dust. I told myself it was the echo of a truck's air brake, or an overeager imagination fattened on ghost stories, but the certainty of iron wheels on iron rails lodged in my bones. I went home, uneasy, slept badly, and dreamed of my father. He disappeared when I was 12, sometime after a fight with my mother that rattled the windows. He left no note, only his wallet on the kitchen table, photos removed. The police searched, volunteers combed the woods, reporters clogged our street for a week. Then reality closed ranks. Some said he had run off, others suspected suicide, but I believed none of it. In my dream that night, he was sitting in a railway carriage I couldn't recognize. Frost ghosted the glass, unfamiliar stars drifted outside, and a soft violet glow seeped through the cracks where the coach joined the corridor. He raised one hand as if to wave, but darkness foxed the edges of his outline until he became charcoal smeared by careless hands. I woke certain the whistle had been meant for me. The next day, I scoured local archives. Deep in brittle newspaper microfilm from 1952, I found a short piece titled, "Midnight Train Sighted Again." The clipping described an unscheduled locomotive passing the Benton Valley Viaduct at exactly 12 o'clock, witnessed by 3 farmhands and a constable. They reported carriages lit from within by lavender lamps. A week later, another report placed the same train 40 miles east, crossing a bridge demolished in 1931. After that, nothing. I didn't believe in fate, but I believed in patterns. I started camping at the ruined platform every night, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a pocket recorder in the other. During the day I told no one, not even my mother, who had boxed away her grief and labeled it "handle with no care." For 6 nights there was only cricket song, bad coffee, and drizzle. On the 7th the whistle returned, richer now, carrying the resonance of cathedral organs. Midnight struck. The moon was only a fingernail, the sky unfurled in inks. From the black mouth of the cutting, twin filaments of light appeared, lantern yellow at first, then turning that impossible shade of violet. Rails burst from the dirt in front of them, unfurling like metal tongues. I could see them forming, tie by tie, pushing aside weeds and tamarisks as though they'd never been gone. A locomotive slid forward, polished smoke box reflecting scenery that wasn't there. Scarlet mesas, green oceans, starlit steeples. One moment the cars were ragged MKPTs, stock from the 20s. The next they were sleek silver Zephyrs. Then lacquered timber coaches with stained glass windows. The train kept adjusting itself, trying on eras, the way children try masks. When it hissed to a stop beside me, I shivered harder than the November cold could justify. The doors didn't line up with any carriage I recognized. Copper-framed panels embossed with vines and tiny moths swung inward. I smelled rain on burnt stone, ozone, marjoram, and something older than memory. Though I had rehearsed 100 greetings for my father, the only words that came were, "One ticket, please." Hell, a figure emerged from the vestibule. A conductor, perhaps, in his mid-40s, hair salted at the temples. He wore a uniform cut from cloth blacker than shade and trimmed with buttons that looked like watch faces. Some ticked, some showed phases of the moon. His eyes contained the northern lights. "Name and date of departure," he asked pleasantly, as though we stood at an ordinary commuter platform. I swallowed. "Helen Reyes." My father, Manuel Reyes, left home July 9th, 1997. The man consulted an illuminated ledger whose pages flickered like film reels. Manifest indicates he boarded from Merrill's Hollow 10 hours after disappearance. He is currently seated in car 11, compartment 3. The confidence with which he spoke unraveled me. Hands shaking, I offered money. He shook his head. Price was paid when you decided this mattered more than the life you were living. Bored? Quickly. We keep strict time. I stepped onto the rubber gangplank. The conductor touched 2 fingertips to the brim of his cap, then pulled a brass lever embedded in the vestibule wall. Air rang with chimes. Rails behind the train began dissolving into sparks even before the wheels rolled. By the time the coach shutters quivered shut, the old Midland platform had vanished. In its place was a corridor of poplar trees, spread beneath indigo skies, each leaf phosphorescent. The train eased forward, wheels singing on tracks that grew in front and crumbled behind like time reversing. Inside, the corridor smelled faintly of leather polish and rain-on dust. Each compartment door bore a window of rippled glass in which scenes from impossible landscapes reflected. Basalt cliffs under twin suns, canals running with liquid copper, infinite wheat fields where giants threshed by moonlight. None were the scenes passing outside, which changed each time I blinked. Now an ocean of lilac, fog, now a desert where abandoned Ferris wheels half buried themselves in dunes, now a city of clock towers, tilting like wilted sunflower. I walked, each step weighted with dread and hope, until the numerals 11-3 glowed beside a door of pale teak. My hand hovered at the latch, afraid that if I opened it the dream would end before I learned how to wake. I pushed. The compartment was candle-lit. A man sat by the window reading a book whose pages emitted a faint hum. Hair thick and black, shoulders rounded, hands large. My father's silhouette preserved exactly as the last day I saw him, only he hadn't aged a minute, though 26 years had eaten me hollow. I spoke his name. He marked his place, looked up, and smiled with a sorrow older than both of us. "I hoped it would never be you," he said. Words dammed behind my teeth broke free. I asked where he had gone, why he'd left, why no message, what was this train, why he still looked 32, why I could smell jasmine, why the sky outside was now an upside-down forest. He patted the seat. I sat, knees shaking, the cushions sighed, releasing warmth like bread fresh from an oven. "This train," he began, "belongs to regrets. Every midnight it runs through places that almost existed, ideas the world had but abandoned. Passengers are people who slipped out of their own timelines, some by choice, fugitives from guilt, grief, or boredom, others by accident, lost in avalanches, ships, mines. Time keeps moving without us, but here it loops like a record player needle, bumping the edge. I tried to catch my breath. "But you're alive." He nodded. "Alive, but unstuck." On the 9th of July, I drove out to Clarebrook Ridge, meaning to think, maybe cool off. A storm came. I took shelter in the old tunnel by the river, the one kids dare each other to walk through. I heard the whistle, thought it was thunder, followed the sound, and this train emerged where a wall should have been. The conductor offered a ride, short or long. I meant to look around and come right back, but every window showed somewhere I wanted to believe was real, and I stayed too long to return without cost. The moment we pass, the minute I left my tether-to-home phrase, I've watched years slide by like scenery. "Why didn't you send a sign?" My voice cracked on the final word. "I tried. Postcards fade before delivery. Dreams leak but rarely stay. The train forbids anchors. It isn't cruelty, merely balance." A snow-white plane rolled past, dotted with gigantic origami cranes. Their paper wings crackled in wind I couldn't hear. I pressed my palm to the glass. It was warm. Beyond the door I heard footfalls. The conductor. Time, like everything here, was limited. "Come with me," I pleaded. Father's smile bent like light through water. I'd fade the moment I stepped off. "I'm vapor outside this engine." "Then I'll stay." I expected an argument, tears, thunderous music. He only shook his head gently. "For passengers born here, leaving is death. For those like you, staying is forgetting. You'd dissolve into possibility until your name didn't ring any bell in any world. There's beauty in it, but no memory, and I want you to remember. He reached into his coat and withdrew a pocket knife I'd given him for Father's Day. Heap steel, red plastic handle, scuffs on the blade. He placed it in my hand. Proof I loved you in a place that exists. Pressure built behind my eyes. Along the corridor, doors began opening. Passengers emerged. A girl in Edwardian lace, a man wearing 70s disco llama, an elderly woman with a fur muff. They drifted toward a lounge at the center of the train where an amber glow pulsed like a hearth. Their mouths moved in lilting conversation, but I heard no words, only the low rumble of distant thunder. The compartment lantern dimmed. A bell tolled overhead. One chime, then another. The conductor's tread stopped outside. I clutched the knife. If I leave, will I see you again? When the train calls, you'll hear it. Might be tomorrow. Might be the day you die. Bring your stories. They keep me alive more surely than lungs. Something in his face shifted. Pride, maybe, or surrender. And tell your mother I was on my way home when I got lost. My throat closed. I pressed my forehead to his. He smelled of cedar and salt. I whispered every apology and forgiveness I knew. He answered in the same alphabet. Then he kissed my hair and turned back to the humming book, already more shadow than man. I walked into the corridor. The conductor bowed slightly. Ready? A nod was all I could manage. We passed through carriages that resembled botanical gardens under glass domes, through a dining car where spoons stirred absent cups, past compartments where passengers played card games with empty chairs. I kept expecting the landscapes beyond the windows to loop, but they never repeated. My favorite was a coastline where waves rose in slow motion, each crest packed with luminous jellyfish whose bells formed cursive phrases I couldn't decode. At the vestibule, the conductor pulled the brass lever. Rails regenerated outside, the rickety line that once fed Benton Valley. Stone platforms reknitted, iron lampposts sprouted filaments. He extended a hand. Remember, midnight, wherever hope and sorrow cross. I stepped down. The air was December sharp, smelling of coal dust and wood smoke. Behind me the train glided away. Rails sank, ties crumbled. In seconds there was only overgrown gravel and my own breath, panting fog into darkness. I walked home under a moon as thin as a cut. Each crunch of frost underfoot felt impossibly solid. Mother was awake at the kitchen table, nursing tea. I had rehearsed no speech for her either. When I told her what I had seen, words should have sounded ludicrous, but they spilled smooth as river stones. She listened, face static as a frozen pond, until I placed the pocket knife on the table between us. Scratches on the handle aligned perfectly with nights the three of us had spent camping beside Lake Morrow, cutting apples and skipping stones to see who could wake the loons. She touched it like one finger's a bruise. Years arrived with a hush of snowfall. We stayed up until dawn, dividing silence into small, swallowable pieces. When sun finally sieved through the curtains, reality still held. The knife remained solid, cold. Over the following weeks, I felt changes that were difficult to name. The color of traffic lights seemed deeper. The taste of coffee held bittersweet strata. I had never pursed. Ordinary trains whistled through town, mocking and mundane. Yet each blast carried an undertone I couldn't forget. I began writing letters to Father in a notebook, stories of my mother's new garden, of the high school students who now crowded the library after class, of the stray dog we adopted and named Viaduct. At night I read them aloud, hoping sound traveled beyond geometry. Newspaper archives proved the midnight train hadn't been idle. Every few years, odd items surfaced. Entire families reuniting in diners at 12:05 with relatives who had perished in flash floods. Hikers reappearing on trails closed since before their births. A steam locomotive that materialized on a newly paved stretch of interstate, its carriages packed with Civil War deserters. The articles were always pulled or corrected within days. I printed them while I could and kept a box under my bed. Months passed, then years. Mother and I healed along edges we hadn't noticed were torn. Still, the whistle didn't return. Sometimes I doubted my memories, wondered if grief had conjured them. Yet the pocket knife never rusted. Its blade reflected places I hadn't visited. On my 39th birthday, same age father would have been when he vanished. A letter arrived without stamp or return address. At the end, the whistle said the old address. It was a conductor's ticket, punched with the date December 31st and the words, "Final Reunion," beneath. On New Year's Eve, the library closed early. I took a thermos of coffee and walked to the platform, finding it restored precisely as it had been before rails were torn up, wooden benches varnished, lamps lit with violet glass. The train's headlamp bloomed down the track. This time, I heard many voices inside the whistle, my father's among them, and others I recognized, friends who'd vanished from small-town rumor mill, names whispered around campfires. The locomotive stopped. Doors sighed open. The conductor, older now, eyes gentler, tipped his hat. "Long or short ride?" he asked. "Until the next beginning," I answered, stepping aboard. I expected to proceed to car 11 again, but the corridor looked different, warped by knotholes of possibility. Instead, the conductor guided me toward the lounge, where passengers congregated under amber light. Father rose from an overstuffed armchair, still 32, but somehow less translucent, color restored by anticipation. Mother was beside him, looking exactly as she had that morning over tea, only calmer, as though the harsh arithmetic of aging had granted her surplus peace. "I heard the whistle," she said to me. When I walked out back, the garden gate had become a door. Lead the way, I thought. We embraced, laughter and tears indistinguishable. Around us, passengers swapped tales. A pilot lost over the Pacific in 1943. A boy who vanished from a county fair in '84. A scientist presumed dead in an Antarctic blizzard. Each story knitted the lounge into a tapestry, bright with what-ifs. The train began to accelerate. Outside, scenery coalesced into a single vast panorama. A valley of flowering mercury trees. Under skies of blended dawns, every color, from Kilmoople to birthday candle blush. The conductor cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, of divergent timelines, welcome to the Meridian Leg, where paths converge before choosing their final direction. Some of you will disembark at realms you felt in dreams. Others will return to anchor points, memories intact. Decide before the last bell." Conversation rose like birds at sunrise. Mother laced her fingers with Father's. They regarded me. "I think," she said softly, "we owe a garden some blooming." He laughed, nodding. "And someone must teach Viaduct not to beg at the table." The possibility of them coming home rattled me with joy so loud it almost overwhelmed fear. "Can you? Will you stay solid?" "We'll borrow against the future," Father answered. "Stories are currency. You have plenty." A bell chimed once, twice. The conductor tapped his ledger. Doors along the coach shimmered, each revealing a different world. Snow-laden city streets gleaming under gaslight. Fields of glass roses sighing in summer heat. A porch swing creaking beside a farmhouse that smelled like July at 11. I recognized our backyard in the last door mulch, piled against tomato stakes. Viaduct zooming circles around a maple sapling. Mother and Father stepped through together. They didn't fade. Instead, color bled from the threshold into them, deepening their clothes, warming their skin, binding them to gravity. My throat tightened. The conductor turned to me. "Your ticket permits one more journey. You may ride on or disembark." I looked down the aisle at stories yet untold, vistas yet invented. I thought of shelves of books waiting back in the town library, of thunder in the spine of every unread volume. I could sail endless night seas, or I could go home and turn those midnight realms into words others might hold when ordinary life felt too small. "Home," I said. He bowed and offered his hand. The door materialized, framing my mother hugging father under the porch light while snow globed around them. Their joy glowed brighter than moon on fresh ice. I stepped through. Cold air pinched my cheeks, and the door vanished before I could look back. The house held its breath. Then Viaduct burst out, tailwind milling. Mother laughed until tears glazed her lashes. Father, no longer a silhouette, wrapped me tight. Above us, a train whistle receded into starlight, promising that impossible landscapes would keep blooming somewhere beyond the horizon, calling wanderers who needed them. We went inside to make cocoa, 3 cups steaming on the table. The pocket knife lay near the sugar bowl, blade open, ready to cut slices of time into manageable shapes. As we talked, deep into the night, each story we shared anchored us more firmly, yet left the windows ajar enough that, should the whistle sound again, we would smile at the crossroads of hope and sorrow and know exactly where to go.